So many of you know I wasn't raised in the church, and so I never went to church with my parents. And now I'm a pastor, and then I'm a parent, and I have kids. And one of the things that you hear about is horror stories for pastors' kids of what things are like. And so, it's something I'm very sensitive to. One of the things that I've tried to do is be judicious, about what sorts of illustrations and things, and then I always ask to see if it's okay with them. And so today I have something to share with you, and I want you to know that I asked. It's mostly about me, but there's no possible way that I can do this one without it actually being clear that there was one of my kids and which one it was. So there's no anonymity whatsoever. And I think it was a little more than a month ago, my oldest daughter, who is Hannah, comes to me and she says, "Okay, Dad, I don't want you to worry." And all the parents are laughing. So you hear that, and then the next thing is, "I want you to come look at the car." Now, it's my car. She gets to drive it. And I hear this, and so I start to follow her, and already I'm praying. Okay, Lord, I believe this is a learning opportunity, whatever it is. She hasn't told. Okay, so I'm preparing for the worst. I just want to have a good reaction. I don't want to get upset. It's all going to be good. Okay. And so we get out there, and we're looking at the car, and she says, "So, Dad, the check tire light came on again, and it always is coming." The check light. Oh. Okay, in the future, all you got to say is, "Dad, there's an issue with the tire," and see, it's like, save the. Dad, don't worry for something really, really big, because this one, that just made me worry all the more. Okay, so our scripture passage today has that possibility where this is how it's going to hit you, is that you're coming in and you're worried. And you know it. And it's keeping you up at night, and then you hear Jesus' words. And Jesus is my Lord. And he says, "Do not worry." And it's a command. And to be perfectly honest, you're in relationship with Jesus, and you're listening to this, and you're like, "Jesus, this is not helping. This is actually adding to the worry. Now I'm breaking your command. I'm sitting, and it's even worse, and what am I going to do?" So let me give you some good news. It is a command, but it's really an invitation, and it is a promise, an invitation to a different way of life. Jesus is saying, "Let me invite you into a life where the worries of this world will never overwhelm you. Let me invite you into a peace that will sustain you through the most difficult storms of life. I promise, my Father is more than capable of handling every situation that you are facing." In the words of Julian of Norwich, who expresses this promise in my favorite way, "All shall be well. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." It's going to be okay. So we did this last week, and I think these are important words, so I'm going to ask you to do this again. If you can stand up, we are going to read this scripture passage together. These are words of Jesus, Matthew 6:25. These are words to live by. This is an invitation. This is a promise. "Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father needs them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about your clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Thank you. You may be seated. So the question this morning is, how do we live into this invitation and this promise? How do we actually stop worrying? Because it sounds really good, doesn't it? Probably everyone here, to some degree, is carrying the kind of worry that Jesus is talking about. I think there's some, there's some point when we're little kids where we don't worry like this. And you just play and you just are and it's all good. And then at some point it changes. Probably somewhere around the time you start going to school. Now, it used to be kindergarten was all just play. Today, and this is the kind of the trajectory of things, we've become, I think, a more worried society. Today, it's like a Calvin and Hobbes sort of a thing. The little kid comes into school, kindergarten, first day, and the teacher tells them to pick up books because we're going to read. And one of the little kids is like, read? I don't know how to read. And then they talked to the little kid next to him and said, what? You don't know how to read? I did my baby sign language when I was 1, and I started reading when I was 3. Oh my goodness, you're way behind. And then it just keeps going. In elementary school, I think one of my biggest concerns and fears was Rocky. And Rocky, about 4th grade, we had rumors that he had been held back for at least 3 or 4 years. I mean, he was shaving already. His name was Rocky. I'm not going to tell you his last name, but his name was literally Rocky. And he was like a foot taller than everybody else. And he liked to pick on everybody. And so he was a concern. But you move out of elementary school and you get into middle school, and it's worse, right? I mean, now there's grades, and the grades start, you don't get a number anymore, you get a grade. There's peer pressure, acceptance, belonging, what clothes, how do I cover these pimples, my voice is changing. High school, it gets worse. Now the grades count. And then, well, there's more peer pressure, and there's more of a sense of looks, and then there's also the whole pressure of building a portfolio of, am I going to college or am I not going to college, and what's going to happen? And so you graduate from high school, and it's worse. I was watching the figure for the student loan debt today, like $1.3 trillion or something. Kids are coming out of undergraduate and graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can you imagine having to start with that? And then it's, well, what's going to be my career? And then relationships, and then marriage, and then you get married. And then you have kids. So yesterday, just so you know, in a couple of weeks, we're going to start kicking off a prayer ministry where we have a prayer team. And at the end of service and in service, there's going to be opportunities for you to come forward for prayer because we want God to touch our lives. And we're sitting there and we're going through the training yesterday, and we have a whole team of people very excited about this. And I was reminded because, there's this part about the difference between talking about something or reading about something and actually doing something. So before I had kids, I read about 15 books on parenting because that's what I do. I'm a researcher. But I'll tell you that there is a huge difference between reading a book about parenting and you're like my wife and I are, they're letting us out of the hospital? And so now you're not only worried about yourself, and then there's your career, but now you have kids. And I'm in the middle of it. So then I get, Dad, don't worry. And then I'm talking with somebody who's not here today, but's in this service, so I won't pick on their name. But then they go, oh, but Ralph, yeah, but see, it kind of gets worse because then they leave. But you used to be able to go see them, and they were all safe and asleep in their beds, and now they're out in the world. And then you go to the doctor one day, and then the doctor says, oh, we have to do some tests. And your worry goes, whoop! And, and then you go to the doctor, and then they do the tests, and then it takes like 2 weeks for them, and if anybody here is in the middle, it's just terrible. And then you have grandkids, and then you worry for your grandkids, and then your parents get older, and then you worry for them, and then you get older, and then at some point, you don't worry because you forgot. No, I'm kidding. But, I mean, they're which at this point is, which I worry about. That's one of my fears right there. And I was talking to somebody afterwards, and, like last week, if you were here, I talked about the guy who was known for looking for loose change. There's a much greater likelihood that some of us here are known because what we constantly do is worry. Oh, that's the person who worries all the time. So this is huge. And Jesus says, you actually don't have to worry. Now, an invitation, a promise. How? There are 3 actions in this passage that Jesus gives us to help us with dealing with our worry. The first action is captured by 2 words, therefore and consider. And the action is, I want you to turn on your brain, and I want you to start thinking, and I want you to start looking at the world with God in it, my Father in it. Therefore, all of this "do not worry" is coming out of stuff that Jesus has already said. Looking back, I want you to remember, I want you to think, I want you to connect the dots between the choice that you have already made. The choice that you've made is that you're treasuring God and He's first in your life. And the stuff of this world is not going to get in the way of where Jesus is in your life. You're going to be willing to put down this stuff because you know that you're not just living for this life, you're living for the life to come. Therefore, you don't have to worry because the life to come relativizes everything that's happening. It's all going to be okay. And easier said than done, right? It is. But we're going to turn on our minds. Let's think for a moment. I just want you to think about who Jesus was originally speaking to. Because he's being realistic. He's saying, I don't want you to worry. You don't need to worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink or what you're going to wear. Just the basic things, right? In Jesus' day, he's in Galilee. He's up on a hillside. He's preaching. Most of the people that he was speaking to were incredibly poor. Most of the people, for their entire life, were going to live off of less than $1 a day. They would be poor until they died. 95% of the people that Jesus was speaking to would never know how to read or write. Many of them at the time were lame or sick. They had no medicines. Probably about 50%, maybe even more, were slaves. And they would never be free. So, expectations. A baby gets born. Expectation, average person, 30 years. You'd live 30 years and you would die. Some people lived older, but the thing was a whole bunch of other people, they died earlier. In their situation, most of those people only would have a couple of pieces of clothing and they would only have a little bit of food. There was always the threat of famine. There was always the threat of real starvation. There was always the times in the year where you went to bed hungry and you woke up hungry. So, I mean, it's not even really a question, but I mean, how many people think that they had it harder, more difficult than what we have today? Yeah. Yeah. And Jesus says you don't have to worry. I mean, if we look at it, right? I mean, what do we have to worry about anymore? We've got all this food, we've got clothes, our standard of living, we read, we write, we're better educated, we have all this medicine, all of these things. So there's no reason to worry, right? Except we do. In fact, do you know that anxiety and worry is actually going up? Anxiety is the most common mental illness affecting Americans today. 40 million adults in America per year. The number is increasing. A guy from Harvard did a longitudinal study over 40 years. And over 40 years, what he found is that today we are 10 times more likely to worry and have anxiety than people living 40 years ago. Even though on every standard, our living is better and our situation is better. But Jesus understands that the stuff of this world, even though it promises giving us a sense of security, doesn't really deliver. Therefore, you've put your treasure in God in heaven. Therefore, you know that more money, more health, more success isn't going to free you from worry. Worry was a way of life for them. It's become even more so for us. And Jesus says you don't have to live this way. So, we're turning on our brains. We know where our treasure is. Now, let's be clear, though, on what Jesus really means by worry. Because it's always good to understand what the word is about. The word here can mean just showing care. And Jesus is saying, what he's not saying is, I don't want you to care. Instead, in this context, it's the idea of anxiety, fret, worry. It's, I can't go to sleep at night because it's just churning over in me. It's the thing where it's constantly with me because I want to control what's going to be happening, and I don't have control, but I really need to have control, and so I'm worried about how this is going to work out. I'm waiting, and it's been a week, and I haven't heard from the doctors, and I can't stop thinking about it, and everywhere I go, I'm thinking about it, and I can't, and that's what Jesus is talking about. He's not saying, don't plan, don't work, don't practice due diligence, don't exercise good judgment. We should lock our doors. We should manage our money wisely. We should drive carefully, especially when we're on icy roads. He's not trying to have us become people who are who go and, go cliff jumping, right? You don't have to be extreme. He's not saying, but what he's getting at is he says, in fact, I want you to have compassion. I want you to care for people. It's more than natural for you when a loved one has some issue that you're concerned for that person and you pray for that person. And in the midst of that, we're supposed to be salt and light. We should make a difference. We should be wise. We should make plans. We should deal with our issues. We should be able to manage things well. The worry that he's talking about is after you've made your plan, after you've dealt with the issue and you know what's going to go forward, it's the worry that you have after everything's planned out and you know what you're going to do and you've lifted up the prayers to God and you go, okay, here's what and then you continue to churn over it. Does that make sense? Have care, have compassion, be wise, make plans, but don't have anxiety. Don't keep thinking and worrying and holding on and letting it eat you up from the inside. And it's really about the future, about trying to control what's going to happen so that nothing bad. And so Jesus says, turn on your brains, and I want you to consider. The argument here is a reasonable argument from the lesser to the greater. I want you to consider the birds of the air. I want you to consider the flowers of the field. The birds of the air, they don't worry about tomorrow. You guys, you got to make some plans for tomorrow. And I get the plans. The birds of the air, though, just pay attention. God knows what they need, and he provides it. They work. They go, and every day they're out and they're working. But they're not storing up. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're just focusing on the moment and doing the things so that they can provide. But God's the one who really provides. They just have to go about their work and to pick up the things that he gives them. You're worrying about tomorrow. You can't let go of the worry that you have for tomorrow. You don't control tomorrow. You can't add 1 day to your life. You can't add 1 inch to your height or a foot. We don't know what tomorrow has. So quit getting all worked up about that. You're trying to manage your life. You're trying to secure your future. You're trying to control the situation. Consider the flowers of the field. So, they don't spin. They don't make cloth. But I'll tell you that these flowers, and these aren't your prized rose garden stuff. This is just the flowers that spring up, the weed flowers. And they're more beautifully ordained than Solomon, one of the richest persons who ever lived, at least by Jesus' day. Your heavenly Father knows what you need. So I want you to turn on your brains, and I want you to realize, and I want you to see that you can't control the future. But I want you to see things from God's perspective. He knows it, and he cares, and this leads to the second action. So, the most reasonable thing for you and I to do with our future is to trust God with our future. But, trusting. Big difference between me telling you the theory you should trust and the experience of trusting. Trust is won over time. It's the whole thing of the difference between reading a book about parenting and being a parent. So let me tell you a story as far as when I was a kid. One of the areas of trust that I had was my parents getting me places. Never really worried. My dad was a professional truck driver. No tickets, no accidents, 1,000,000 miles, professional driving, never once any of those things. So it was this thing where, I just sat in the back and enjoyed life and just was taken for a ride and everything was good. And then one day, I got in the car with one of my uncles. And my uncle drove. And it was a white-knuckle experience. I got out of the car. I looked at my dad. I go, Dad, I wasn't sure if I'd make it. And then my dad kind of laughed, and he's, well, yeah. I'm not going to pick on which uncle it is, but he has lots of tickets and lots of accidents. And how many of you like to drive? And if you raise your hand, you probably like to drive because you like to be in control. And it makes you feel comfortable. And if you like to drive and you like to be in control, it may be hard for you to actually let other people drive. Some of you say no. So that's good for you. Some of us are control freaks. So my dad really doesn't like letting other people drive unless he trusts them. But you got to prove it. He's got to, and it's over time. And so it took a number of years, but my dad I'm one of the few people where he'll let me drive his cars and him around, and he enjoys that. In fact, the sign is that he can actually fall asleep now when I'm driving, and it's all good. No tickets, no accidents, at least no tickets in the continental United States. One time in Canada, and it was a speed trap, and I've been driving that road for 5 years, but that's my only ticket. So, moving violation. Steve was in the car when I got another ticket, but it wasn't about my driving. I forgot to put the little tag thing on the back of my car. Had to drive to Yakima. Oh, well. So, now, I tell you that story because I want you to understand that there is a driver's seat for the universe. There is a throne, and somebody sits on it, and it's our God, and he's in control. And what he's saying is, especially for you who are control freaks, when it comes to the future, let me drive. I've got it. It's okay. I'm the only one who can really secure the future for you. You don't know what's going to happen, but I know what's going to happen. That's what Jesus is reminding us of here. Don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough concerns. Just do the things that you can take responsibility for today. Now, let me give you a strategy on some of the way that you can let go your anxiety and your worry, and you can exercise trust in God. If you're anxious over something right now, if you are worried and it is something that it is with you and you know it, today, I want you to go home some point. I know it's the Super Bowl, so you know it doesn't matter about what time. But I want you to open up your Bibles to Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. Philippians is towards the back of your Bibles. It's one of the letters of Paul. You'll start to see things like Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, and you're getting closer, and then you'll see Galatians, Ephesians, and you'll see Philippians, and there you go. I want you to have a pad of paper and a pen, and you're going to spend some time talking with Jesus and listening to Jesus about your anxiety and your worry. And what I suggest is that you go and you sit in this passage for a while. You read it a number of times out loud. Read it slowly, first time through, and then as you read it again, focus and dwell on the words that impact you. Do not be anxious. Anxious. Oh. I am anxious about anything. How possibly could I not be anxious about anything? And you'll read through this over and over again, and you'll listen to it. You may want to write this down because this is my assignment to you today. Think about all of the things that you might be anxious about. And then write them down on a piece of paper or in a journal or on a notebook. And then prayerfully sit there and say, okay, Lord, I want wisdom. What can I do in each one of these situations to help bring it to resolution? Make your plans. Ask for God to give you peace, wisdom, strength, and to help establish these plans, that these would be his plans for you. And then with everything else, you've got your plan in place. You know what you can do. There's going to be some things on that list that may be really worrying you and is keeping you up at night, and there is nothing that you can do. All of the stuff that's left that there's nothing to do, but it's worrying you, then I want you to give it to him. Lord, I'm giving you this, and then I want you to pray to God about those things. I want you to make specific requests. Lord, I want you to work in my dad's heart so that you can change him, so that he can be secure and he can have peace. I want you to write it down, because I want you to be looking forward for God to answer that prayer. Now, that's the first assignment. Here's the second assignment. For some of you, something's going to happen. You've done your little exercise. You know when the worry comes for most of us, right? It's when we're in bed and we're trying to go to sleep and we're laying there. And I saw one pastor give another pastor who was probably doing another exercise. So Craig Rochelle is the guy that this comes from, but he might have got it from somewhere else. But what I'm going to invite you to do is you're going to make a 1 Peter 5:7 box. If you wake up at night and you're still worrying, you're going to make a 1 Peter 5:7 box. Cast all your anxiety on the Lord because he cares for you. He wants you to take all of these worries and give it to him. Now, you've woken up, you're still worrying, you've done your little exercise, but you can't fall asleep. So you're going to, and notice any box. This doesn't have to be all nice and, spiritual. This is spiritual. Just grab a box, stick your little 1 Peter 5:7. Now, I want you to put it in the garage or in the laundry room, someplace far away from your bedroom. You make your box. You can have little note cards. You can have scrap paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. Okay. You've already made your plans, you've already prayed, but you're still worrying. I want you to write down that worry, that anxiety, and then I want you to say, okay, Lord, I can't sleep. It's keeping me up. You say, cast my anxiety on you because you care for me. I'm giving you this anxiety. I want to be able to sleep. Take it. And then you leave it. And then you go back to sleep. You're probably going to wake up again. That's the way it goes. This isn't going to be automatic. Some of us, the anxiety is so bad, what we really need is we need some help. We're never expected to get through life all by ourselves. We have professional counselors. There's people who train and they're committed and they're going to be of help. Some of us, it's just the way it's going to go. But we're trying. I made my little box. I tried to cast my anxiety. I'm waking back up. Now, if you wake back up, you have a choice to make. And it's a choice, but this is what the choice looks like. You can either say, Lord, I woke up again, but I am casting that anxiety back on you. It's in the box. Or you can make this choice. You can walk back to the box. It's going to be a walk. And as you go, you're going to start talking to God. Okay, God, I can't fall asleep at night because really, I want to take this back on myself because I want to hold the driver's seat. And so I'm taking this back because I'm not leaving it with you yet. But that's the choice that you made. But you got to walk and you got to pray. And you know that he wants it. And then when you're ready, you come back and you say, okay, it's yours again. This is what a real relationship with God's like. He knows that we're going to struggle with worry and anxiety. He knows that we're going to need all the help that we can possibly get. He knows that we're going to wake up at night and we're not going to get this right the first time, the second time, or the third time. And so we come to worship today, and here's the thing. You and I, we don't even have to wait to get home today to start dealing with this. It's altogether possible that at some point while I'm sharing from God's word, you're feeling God knocking on your heart. At that point, I give you permission. If the Holy Spirit knocks on your heart, you can start ignoring everything that I have to say, and you can just start talking to him. Great. We come here because the only one who can save us is Jesus. And today, right now, in this service, he is with us. And he wants us to feel him and to know him. And he wants us to grow in our experience that he is completely competent. And the universe is safe in his hands. And if we're feeling worried or anxious or overwhelmed by the problems of this world, we have the gift of coming to this table today. So, I said 3 actions. The first one is to turn on our brains, to think, to consider, in particular to pay attention to the Lord. The second is to exercise faith in him, to actually begin to do those things where we hand him the steering wheel and say, okay, the future is with you. The third action is this. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be given unto you. One of the hardest things to do is that if you are all caught up in worry, is to take your eye off the worry. But if you can take your eye off the worry and you can start paying attention to Jesus, and if you can start actually living into being on mission for him, if his concerns, his kingdom, the call that he has on your life, where you start to live, one of the most dangerous things for us is something none of us worry about. It's the easy chair in our living room, where we plop down and we sit before the TV and we make ourselves all comfortable. Because if we live for comfort, if that's what we're always trying to get to, it won't bring the security, but it also won't prepare us to really live for Christ. Sitting in that chair doesn't get you all excited to jump out of your seat and do great things for Jesus. I don't know about you. There's a place for rest. There's a place for play. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie and enjoying a little downtime and doing those things. But if that becomes your focus and your aim, just getting through life so that I can get to the easy chair at the end of the day, I'm missing it. We are not called to get comfortable. We're called to make a difference in this world and to pray great prayers and to do great things. And if you get caught up where you find your purpose. And this is, I think, one of the biggest things missing from people's lives is that they don't have enough meaning and purpose. You were made for it. God has a plan for you. He has a plan for us as a church to make an impact on this world. So seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things, they'll be given to you. Your Father knows that you need them. So I have an opportunity for us. I shared it at the congregational meeting last week, but not everybody makes a congregational meeting. We get that. It's exciting. It's not the most exciting thing, but it's exciting. I'm going to let you see the video, and then I'm going to share with you what this opportunity is.
Westside Church, this is John Michael Hinton coming at you, man. I get to be with you guys March 7th. It's going to be amazing. Oh, let me show you. This isn't so much a magic trick, it's more of a life hack. I have a few dollars here. I have $1, $2, $3, $4, which is honestly, when I'm on the road, that's really all I need, because I'm a magician. I can just think about it. Watch. And then look, now I have 100, 200, $300, $400. Hey, luckily the tickets to my show are only $10. This is a total event that you want to invite your friends to. We are going to have an absolute blast. See you guys soon.